Hello and welcome to the final episode of You Only Be School Once, powered by Inside IIM. Once again, we are back with another interesting topic. For those who tune in for the first time, I'm your host, Akshay Sirsalewala. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm an IMK graduate and have been associated with Inside IIM since 2018. I'm also working as a management consultant with the Boston Consulting Group. So great to have you back once again. Today, we will discuss how do you land top HR jobs on campus. And to answer that, we have a wonderful panel. Uh, Three people from Accelerate and someone from SPHMRD also. We have a wonderful panel working in one of the best in the best companies of India. So let's get them to introduce themselves. Anudeep, let's start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Akshay. And before I get started, I definitely like to thank Inside IIM and Akshay for inviting me to this panel discussion. And so, having said that, my name is Anudeep, and I'm part of PwC US Advisory, especially part of Workforce Transformation Team, which is a management consultant role. And I've been part of this organization for a little over 2 years now. And I incidentally also happened to intern with PwC during my summers. And prior to that, I have a experience. So I'm an engineer by my undergrad qualification, and gone ahead and done a role as a technology consultant with one of the major IT service provider company. And then I know it's a shift in some sense in that way, but then yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Anudeep. Also, before we move on to the next person, I just want to make this disclaimer that the views expressed by these people are their views and not the views of the organization. So please don't confuse that. Okay, great. Moving on to Aishwarya, why don't you go next?
Okay. So again, thank you, Akshay and Inside IIM for this opportunity. As Akshay mentioned, I'm Aishwarya and I am a commerce graduated. I straight after my graduation, I went for Accelerate for my MBA and I graduated last year. And I interned with Coca-Cola India and now I'm working with Delivery after my graduation and I'm working as the manager employee experience and as the HRBP for corporate. So yes, that is a good role and thank you again, Akshay, for this opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, Aishwarya. Akash, over to you.
Thanks, Akshay, for having me. Thanks, Inside. Always a pleasure being here. I did my mechanical engineering post which I worked in edutech sector for 2 years and handled marketing and branding. Post which I did my MBA from in human resource management from Accelerate. And currently I'm working with Everest Group and I'm a senior analyst as a part of their marketing services and trust and services practice. Glad to be here and looking forward to an amazing discussion.
Great. Akash, thanks again. I think this is the third or fourth time I've called you and you've always been here. So thank you so much once again for coming. Also, guys, if you have any questions on how to get into non-HR roles after an MBA in HR, I think Akash will be the right person. So if you have any questions regarding that, please do direct it to Akash. Then we over to you.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me. So my name is Tanvi. I graduated in commerce from St. Xavier's College. Currently, I'm a second year student here at Accelerate in HR. I interned at Samsung Electronics for my summers.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanvi. So guys, as you can see, we have people who have graduated and have been in the workplace for 2 years. We have people who are currently pursuing the MBA too. So we have a good mix of people. Any question you have, please mention it in the comment box and we'll try to take it up. Okay, so guys, let's start with the very basic question, which is what are the HR roles which come on campus, right? Because I know that Anudeep works in a consulting firm. Aishwarya, you work as an experience manager, right? So there are very, very different domains, even in HR. No, normal perception is HR matlab kya karega? Ki they'll ensure that hiring happens. But that is not the case now, right? So why don't you maybe shed some light on what are the roles which come on campus?
Sure, Akshay. I can start.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you look at the companies, right, most of the matured companies and even like other companies as well, if you see the way the HR function is structured, majorly is divided into three different sub functions, I would say. One is HR generalist, it's more of a role, but then it's again in the common parlance, it's called as HRBP, business partnering. And the main stakeholders for them is their internal customers or internal clients, part of their business unit, as well as the line managers and the senior leadership. So what they do, their role is to implement the strategy and also help them in formulating the strategy and some operational aspects. So that's the major role of HR generalist or HRBP. Again, it's called by different names in different organizations. For example, it's called as talent consultant in few organizations. So the names could be different, but more or less the nature of job is similar. And then the next is specialist, HR specialist, which is again part of, again in normal parlance is called as center of excellence role. Now, what these center of excellence roles are is like it could span across the HR life cycle, be it talent acquisition, talent management, total rewards, uh, learning and development, across. So these are strategic roles wherein their primary duty is to create the HR strategy for the organization or for the business unit that they're catering to, and then work with the HRBP. So HRBPs are their primary customers. They come up with the strategy. They help HRBPs to position the strategy within the business unit and implement that. So that's your role. And then the third is again it's sort of a slightly new age role, I would say, which is shared services. Now, shared services is a role that cuts across all the HR functions, and the primary duty of a HR shared services folks is to, for example, you must have heard about people analytics or HR analytics. Now, that's a role that cuts across all the functions based on the requirement of a particular function. HR analytics or people analytics folks help them and support them and enable them with the data. Likewise, even HR operations could be classified in some sense under shared services, which again do activities such as payroll or anything related to HRIS, the HR information system maintenance and all those. So more or less, these are the roles from an industry standpoint. But otherwise, apart from that, you have roles in consulting, for example, in management consulting. And maybe roles which are related to some research analysis about the market trends and all, like Gartner example. So majorly these are the roles I would say, and please feel free to add in all the other panelists as well. Yeah.
Great. I think that was quite detailed. Anudeep, thank you so much for that. Guys, anybody want to add anything here? Tanvi, Akash, or Aishwarya? Okay, great. I think, yeah. Okay, sorry. Aishwarya, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I just want to mention Anudeep covered it quite comprehensively. And as somebody who has been fortunate enough to be handling two roles, so I am a specialist as well and a generalist as well. So like Anudeep mentioned, generalist roles covers as an HRBP, you have to see everything. You have to ensure that you liaise with the specialist roles. For instance, let's say talent management. If talent management is running a appraisal cycle, as an HRBP, you have to liaise with them and ensure that it's completed for employees under your span. So as a HRBP, as a generalist role, you get to have exposure in multiple domains and you learn a lot initially. And as a specialist role, you get to design strategies, and as Anudeep mentioned, for the entire organization. So yeah, both of them have different aspects and different ways in which you can learn and have exposure.
Yeah.
Asking a basic question here is, so basically, what do people normally prefer? Do they prefer the HR generalist role, or specialist role, which is the more popular one, so to say? Or is there, it's a gray area?
So if you want a gen man equivalent in HR, general management equivalent in HR, maybe then HR generalist is something where you get a flavor of all the other, life cycle of HR elements. Typically a HRBP handles right from hiring until exit. So you see the entire life cycle in some sense. So that is one thing. Yeah.
Got it. Great. All right, Akash, you wanted to add something, or should we?
I mean, there's something which Anudeep actually, he voiced it very well. I just want to say that generally people, in terms of preference, I've seen people preferring the generalist roles first, wherein, like Anudeep mentioned, they get exposure to multiple aspects, and then it becomes easier for them to go into depth and specialize in one or more of them. So that is how generally it is, right? Even in GenMan, let's say, people generally, and then later on they would want to say, find a niche or find a specialization in one of the roles such as marketing / ops or so on and so forth. So that is similarly how it happens in HR. But again, I have also seen people initially getting a specialist role as well. I mean, we have Aishwarya here, and she can also give her experience on working on a generalist vis-a-vis a specialist role. So she can definitely be a better guide here.
Right. Also, one last thing, how easy is it to switch, let's say, from a HR consulting role to a generalist or a specialist? Is it a natural progression?
I think we default to Anudeep on this, and then he is the best to know.
Sure. So Akshay, I think it's the thing is, like, in any particular role, not just in HR, in any other field, if you are there in that particular role for a little over 4 or 5 years, you are more you're going into the depth in terms of industry as well as your work profile. So it may be slightly challenging in terms of transitioning into some other role if you are long enough in that particular role. So ideally, if anyone wanted to explore other roles, it would be easier to do that in their early career. Yeah, not being too much experience in a certain role. Yeah.
Agreed. Great. Okay.
However, I have seen some people making transition from HR to HR consulting role. So that is, I think, relatively easier than maybe the other way around, like Anudeep mentioned, because if you read into some of the JDs for mid-senior and high senior manager, they are looking for people who have worked in terms of, say, HR transformation within their organization or on HCM tools, human capital management tools. So the likes of Abstract, they actually look for people who have got experience in handling HCM tools. So now, if it could be whether one was in HR consulting before or with a part of their organizations, but I've seen people making switch from corporate to consulting. So that is something that I have personally seen.
Very interesting. Right. So I hope that helps a lot of aspirants. Okay, moving on to the next question, which is, so what are the skills which HR companies are looking for? So if I talk about consulting, two major skills which stand out always are communication and problem solving. I mean, those are the core aspects which consulting firms look for. What about HR roles?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I can take a first pass at it.
Sure.
I know, since our target audience is mostly of who are joining MBA schools this year, and they are looking ahead for summer placements. So my advice here is that the expectation is that you would be part of the summer placement process within 1 to 2 months of you joining the organization. I mean, in this case, our college. So even from the recruitment team who would be hiring, the expectation is not to have deep knowledge of HR, because you're just appearing for summer internship. So the softer skills, I would say, not the technical skills from HR, are more important. And I think in general, for any role, maybe specifically for consulting also, some trait like you have mentioned, structured thinking, communication skills, decision making, and observation skills is, I think observation skills is more important. And I know I might be jumping over the discussion, but then just to give a perspective what I meant, so that it might give a better understanding. So typically the audience that you would see part of the B school are divided into two categories. Right? One is lateral, as in the ones who already have a work ex, versus freshers straight out of their undergrad and then doing their MBA.
Correct.
So if you look at laterals, it need not be necessary that they have a prior experience in HR, but they might have experience in any other field, right? So if you see the ones who are having experience prior to that, in every organization there's a HR function that is like non-negotiable, because you need to hire people, you need to train them, you need to do performance appraisal, everything. So right from there being hired, the recruitment process where talent acquisition is involved, and then they being experiencing the learning development exit process, when they resign and joining this. So they might have seen all the touch points of HR. So the thing is, like, if they're having some level of observation skills, understanding, okay, how the process has been in their company, and when they are discussing with their other colleagues or friends, if they're able to understand how other companies are operating, like if they're having some observation skills and thought process about how HR function works, that's definitely a differentiator, is what I would say, because you have a perspective in the first place, in a practical way. Need not be you're very good in theory or with some kind of a uh, some kind of a maybe assumptions or principles in HR, but then if you are having some observation skills, those are like key differentiating factor. And in addition to that, now I think we are we are living in a world where data is very important. So having some data analytics skills and exposure to tools would definitely be a differentiating factor in terms of skills. Because all would have some basic sanity in terms of understanding of HR, but you getting yourself differentiated would lie within having these skill sets. Yeah.
Right. So just to summarize it, basically, some softer aspects will be, checked by your recruiter. Apart from that, if you have some data analytics skills, that will be a very big plus to have. Also, I mean, like in most roles, structured thinking, observation skills are very, very key. Like, Tanvi, you were also going to say something. I think you had unmuted yourself. You want to add anything here?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about data analytics because from what I've seen, there are things happening around data and predictive data analytics. So that is one skill which I think if someone has, it's going to get them forward in their HR career as a start.
Great. So, I think very interestingly, there's also a question by an audience member called Chandan, which is what are the prerequisites to land up in HR analytics? So at least, can you guys also shed light on maybe what kind of tools do people need to know, or where can they learn about these tools? I mean, if anyone has any idea, then please do share it.
I'll quickly add here, especially on the tools part that you mentioned, Akshay. So typically, right, term one of when people get into MBA, they do have subjects on quantitative aspects where they have general understanding of how to do data analytics on tools like Excel, R, or Python. But maybe Python is a long drop. But from what I've heard, I think IIM Ranchi started something along those lines. But basic understanding of how, say, a simple concept like correlation, how correlation works in statistics and how you can use it for your HR functions to predict how is your attrition going to be few years down the line or few quarters down the line. I think if you can use that theoretical aspect and apply it to certain practical stories to tell the recruiter, I think you would have cracked the nail right on the head, right? Secondly, while Anudeep was talking about general expectations, while it's absolutely clear that they do not expect you to have very in-depth understanding of HR, because chances are that not even 10% of the batch has experience in working in HR, right? Many of them are getting exposure to HR for the first time. And hence companies are also looking for people who are good with the conceptual part as well. So I have seen companies and know of companies who typically ask very pointed theory related topics. For example, there is a subject called organization behavior, the difference between personality, characteristic, values. So these, while we use very interchangeably in our common speaking parlance, but when it comes to the academic part of it, it has different definitions and different ways of understanding, right? So that becomes a differentiator. Someone who can has an understanding of those concepts in terms of definition and also how they can apply it to day-to-day HR activities, they would have definitely got an upper hand. And this I'm talking about from a personal experience. There was the company that I interned for, Nestle. They in their process they used to ask for, okay, what is the concept? For example, one of the projects, they asked me what are the concepts that you use in the project. And if I were to ask you to use the same project, same concept in my company tomorrow, what would you do, right? And there I had to come up with, I mean, it actually took us some brainstorming on what we can do, what not, right? So if people are able to relate a lot of HR concepts to real life applications, they definitely would be far ahead. And in terms of a course part, I have noticed a lot of aspirants taking up people analytics course on Coursera. So if they can take that up, that is also going to help them because they would have an understanding, right, of what are the parameters, what are the variables, what are the regression analysis they can do, all of that. So that definitely helps them whenever they get the chance to do so.
Right. Right. Guys, so basically, if you're looking for any courses specifically on analytics, I think, as Akash mentioned at the end, people analytics course on Coursera can be one of the things which you can pursue. Anybody else wants to add anything, any courses or any resources which you would suggest, or I think covered enough by Akash? Okay, great. Okay. Right, so moving on, we also have right. So Tanvi Saurav has said that you are not very clearly audible, and people want to hear you. So just check if if that is possible. Great. Also, we have quite a few questions. We'll take it up one by one, guys. So be rest assured that we will take all your questions. Let's just take one more question, which is very typical question, which is asked in every webinar when we do on a different domain, which is before summers. Now they still have some time left. I think they still have around 3 months, right? So any courses which can be done in the meanwhile, or not even courses, is there anything else which you would recommend them to do in the 3 months or 4 months leading up to the summer placement? Because I think normally placement in my college at least happened in October. So you have around 4 months. Anything you would suggest them to do, or nothing? Just focus on, just enjoy life. And I mean, what do you think?
It's all I think about. Yeah, Tanvi, please go. You're pretty recent.
Yeah, Tanvi is the most recent. She would have good tips to give. Yes.
So I do not recommend anyone to go beyond what is already being done in the MBA curriculum and also the placement training that one gets. However, it is very important to individually go and read on articles and see what are the changes that are happening, because it's always a good talking point for interviews and group discussions. Like what the new companies are doing programs. Specifically, when I talk about HR, there are company programs which highlight the news and why does it happen. So I remember in my interview, I gave these examples, and it was a very structured interview. They asked me about a post-pandemic scenario problem. How would I solve this? And this is when my preparation from reading came in handy, and that's how I went about it. So I think it's a good way to start.
Right. Great. So basically, guys, do read as much as possible. You will have many committees on campus also circulating newsletters, so to say, weekly newsletters, which are very informative. So go through them, and that will be helpful. Anything else anybody wants to add here? Any courses which you would recommend, or not really, not needed as such? Only brushing up of basics is necessary, according to you guys.
Yeah, I think brushing up basics is definitely useful. But then again, softer aspect is try to know about your batch, try to know about the college, the kind of companies that are coming, what preparation that you could do in order to best position yourself by understanding those companies' rules, if possible. Like again, it lies down to building your network, be it with the alums that you'd be joining, the company that the college that you'll be joining. So you could do all those networking aspects in the time that you build going to the campus.
Great. Okay. All right. So moving on to the next aspect, which is the CV, right? Which is obviously very crucial. So, what are some? Let's start with 2 sets of questions here. First is, what are some general tips which you have for students? And secondly, specifically for HR roles, is there something typical which companies look for normally? Like, for example, I can say that in finance specifically, CADs are very important. So people like 999 type of profile, etc. But is there anything specific which HR companies also look for? So two sets of questions here. One is basic general tips which you want to give to students, and secondly, anything specific, so that they can land their dream HR jobs.
Yes. So again, the thing is, I know you did mention about academics, Akshay, but then let's call out that they cannot do much about it now, because all those things are already done. So the things that are in their hand is to again tailor their CV in a sense that it would capture the skills that they already have done. Like for example, if they have WorkX, like I mentioned, if they have been part of any of the HR life cycle, like it could be like they could be a SPOC for in having a communication with HRBP for their team, or they might have been a lead for some knowledge transfer sessions or something like that. So if they have anything related to HR, again they need to sit down, observe, and understand what are those aspects in their previous WorkX that have those touch points with HR. If they are able to capture those notes, keep it handy, and then when they are preparing for CVs, obviously those will help. Again, the other skills that we've discussed in the past questions, like maybe having skill sets of data analytics, or maybe having some foundational understanding through various certifications, all those would definitely add some differentiating factor for the recruiters, because again they would have an assumption that you have at least some background about HR, so let's give him or her the chance of interview call, and then that's how the assessment would happen. So having your CV reflecting some aspects of HR in the past WorkX, even though you don't have an experience in HR, but again tailoring your answers based on your WorkX will definitely be helpful.
Right. Yes, Akash, please go on.
Quickly, just to add, one final way in which candidates can make this CV very HR centric is through academic projects. So typically in the first term, there are multiple subjects, right? And all these subjects, they will have something called academic projects or life projects. Life projects, typically they get to work with a firm, or they actually go on field and do some work. Or academic projects is something that they can take up internally. Now, mentioning that in the CV, and if they are able to back that up on what is the entire methodology, what was the outcome, and how the work would finally affect the organization, and how they plan to take it forward if they were to use the same concept in any other organization they would want to work in the future, I think that adds a lot of value. So the academic project box, and if that is stacked up with 2 or 3 or even 4 set of good projects, I think that definitely adds value.
Great. Anything, Aishwarya or Tanvi, you want to add here?
Yes, so just adding on to Akash's point, so you can do academic projects in your first term as well. But since, like, from my personal experience, I was a commerce grad and I had studied HR in prior and during my graduation, that helps a lot. If you're a non-engineer and you had exposure to, let's say, surface level knowledge of HR, do mention that, do mention projects which you can relate to HR and the work that you'll be doing. And secondly, like, academic projects is important, the softer skills is important. The other thing that you can do is during your first 3-4 months is mention the committee or clubs that you were part of and the work that you did that would help you in decision making and problem solving for your projects in your internship. And you can also be a part of case competitions. If you don't want to mention a project, case competition specific to HR where you solve a particular problem gives you a brownie point, because it tells the recruiter that you have worked upon something and you have some level of practical knowledge about your domain.
Right. Great. So, Anudeep,
Yeah, also just to add to that, anyone, for example, in Aishwarya's case, she had some experience studying HR academically. So I've seen folks who started writing blogs, or maybe writing their perspectives in Quora, LinkedIn, elsewhere related to HR if they are interested in pursuing their career in HR. So doing something and maybe linking up those aspects in CV or talking about during your selection process also adds a value. It shows that you have an interest, you are doing some research, understanding the industry and all. So even that will definitely help.
Completely agree with you here, Anudeep. You can easily blog, etc. And if you are from a good college having good content, you'll also have a good audience very soon. Yes, Akash, you were saying something.
I just wanted to just add that anyone who wants to start blogging or get their presence felt on LinkedIn, I think we have the guru here called Akshay Sirsalewala. He is one of the first members of the first cohort of LinkedIn India creators. So I think no better person to reach out to for support, mentorship, and guidance when it comes to building a brand on LinkedIn. So you know whom to reach out, guys.
This was a paid promotion which I had done with Akash. But yeah, always, if you have any doubts, then do reach out to me. I'll be happy to help. And obviously, you can reach out to any of these 4 people who are literally experts in their field. So Aishwarya, actually, over to you once again. So you had mentioned that you had some background about HR which helped you. So would you also, would you recommend that people maybe read up a bit before joining I mean, read upon some of HR of some basic read upon some HR basic concepts before joining B school, or not really needed? What do you think?
So it's for like, again, it depends. So for instance, in the case of engineer, the recruiter, or let's say even during your B school interviews, they won't expect that you have the knowledge, but it's all, every time good to have. You can bring that into your answers, and whenever you are presented with a problem, you can take that experience. So reading would help, but again, not necessary, because since, like you mentioned, it's just 3-4 months into your course and you are still learning. So softer skills might gain an edge over this knowledge. Like you can go do away with it, but if you are reading, it's a brownie point. It would help you some or the other way.
Great. Okay, got it. Thank you. Right. So basically, just to summarize things, starting with having any academic or life projects on your CV, that will help. If you cannot do many projects during the first 3-4 months, because you are busy with other things, if you have done some projects in the past, you can also highlight them. That will be very helpful. If you're part of any good committees, do highlight them, and case competitions also, if you can take part, specifically those focused on HR aspects. I think that will gain you more brownie points. Right. So this is the way where you can differentiate your CV from others and gain an edge. Moving on to let's maybe take some questions from the audience. So Chandan has asked a very interesting question: which is coding knowledge necessary? If yes, then which language should we go for? Python, R, etc. So guys, do you think coding language is necessary? Maybe I think specifically for HR analytics. Yes, Anudeep.
No, to be honest, it's not necessary, because they are dedicated teams. Even if you happen to be part of a people analytics role, you need the important differentiating factor is you need to have the functional expertise. You will have in-house developers who are experts in their own field, like coming up with code, algorithms, and all those. But having the functional expertise and some understanding about basic level of coding, so that because it would be more like a program management role as well, in addition to functional consultant role. So again, the bottom line is it's not required. If you have interest, that's a different thing, but then it's not required.
Perfect. Okay. So I hope that answered your question, Chandan. All right. So a couple of questions regarding TIS and IIM Rachi. Are they good options for HR colleges? Guys, I think you will have to do your own research here. Does anybody want to give their opinion here, or should we swiftly move on to the next question?
I can give a general statement as not speaking with respect to any particular college. If you are choosing to do your majors in HR, try to join a college which has at least a legacy of 15-20 years. I mean, catering to HR as a department or a specialization, and also look at the kind of companies and roles that are coming into that campus. And if you're satisfied with those, then definitely you can go ahead with that. But otherwise, if it's relatively a newer course for that particular B school, then you might have to take slightly a bit of caution in terms of talking to the existing folks in the B school, as well as alums who have done the course, and then looking at weighing the opportunities basically, and would that make a suitable case for yourself to be part of that B school. So that's what I would say.
Cannot stress us enough, guys. Please go through the placement committee report. That will give you enough information, and please reach out to seniors. They will be able to properly, and I'm sure many will reply on LinkedIn or through other platforms. They will reply to you. Ask them what kind of roles come, and do HR roles come, because there are many colleges which do not get many HR roles. If I talk about my college itself, not the best college if you want an HR role specifically, because hardly I think 1 or 2 or 3% people get placed in HR. So please read up before joining any college.
Yeah.
Great.
Also, one advice I would say, just from being little candid, is when you're reaching out to your seniors and alums, also just don't reach out to 1 or 2 people, because inherently everyone will have their own biased views based on their experiences. So if you're reaching out to at least 5-6 people, then the whole opinion would be averaged out. Like you'll get a general trend of what the pulse is about that college. So just don't rely on 1 or 2 opinions is what I want. So, yeah.
Correct. Right. And Also, there's a good chance that if you only reach out to 2 people, they might not reply. If you reach out to 10, at least 2 or 3 will. So do reach out to more people. Great. Okay, moving on to the next question, which is so we've spoken about the CV. We've spoken about what are the skills which are needed. Let's now move to the next section, which is what is the normal interview structure for these roles. And maybe every company will have a different structure. Maybe this answer can be more personalized. But guys, what is the normal structure? Like, for example, if in consulting, I can tell you that it's normally a 3 or 4 round, 3 or 4 rounds where you are asked cases. It's very typical, very fixed. What about HR roles? Also, I just plugging in a joke here, which I recollect, is that HR questions are actually technical questions for HR candidates. But yeah, that is we can ignore that. Moving on to so how does the interview flow in such roles?
Okay, I'll quickly add my thoughts here. Typically, in summers, the way it goes is that we start off with a GD. And the GD is also right for example, FMCG specifically. They have an HR-centric topic as well. For example, I remember my HUL GD where they actually had a very in-depth IR industrial relation related case that they gave to us, and we had to discuss. We had to come up with a solution on how to do it, how to go about it. Right? I think I can think of at least 2 other FMCG companies who had very similar HR-centric GD topic, right? And that is something that makes complete sense also, right? Because they can check a lot more about your one's HR knowledge there. So yeah, GD in which HR topics are there. Then this typically followed by 2 to 3 interviews. 2 interviews are generally the trend, but sometimes they might even go for 3 interviews. And these interviews are a mix of academic questions, what we used to call is behavioral questions, which is like, again, as very equally important. And this is how it progresses. 1 GD followed by 2 to 3 interviews in HR centric roles.
Right. Okay, so that is that has been Akash's experience. Anybody else has a different experience? Or yes, Anand?
Yeah, just to add to what Akash has mentioned, especially for FMCG companies, and we did discuss earlier that maybe not having a lot more understanding about HR is expected. But having said that, for example, if it's an FMCG company and you're solving that case, you should have some basic knowledge about labor laws. For example, we are moving to labor codes. There are 4 labor codes that might be effective from July 1st. So if that's the case, then having some understanding about labor codes, how they operationalize, and what are the roles and duties of everyone, like a worker or how it's segregated. So having that understanding is definitely helpful. And also understanding of HR trends, like what different markets are doing, different industries are catering to, how they are moving, transitioning to. For example, not promoting any particular app, but then maybe following up with something like People Matters, HR Katha, or ETHR. Like, you have all those trends and news that come there, and you also develop a perspective over the course of time. For example, if you're starting now, over the next 3-4 months, you will understand some mega trends within HR. Like, for example, in the last year, it was mostly about great resignation. And this time it's now more about the where employees wanted to work, whether it's a hybrid versus in office versus work from home. So this is a debate where HR plays a crucial role. For example, things that are happening with Tesla or happening with Twitter, all those, like, you get general themes around, and these does not require you to have a deep expertise in HR, but having some understanding about what's happening and having a perspective from your end. Yeah, by reading out all the available articles, you yourself will have a perspective that you'll generate an opinion, basically. Yeah.
Great. So if we start with Anudeep, if we start with Akash, he said that be ready for some HR specific group discussions. If you talk about Anudeep, he mentioned that follow maybe groups like HR Katha, ETHR, where you can find trending topics, read about on them, and then have an opinion at least on them. Tanvi or Aishwarya, anything you want to add here? Maybe speak about your experiences as well.
Yeah, so my experience was entirely like majority of the candidates have similar experiences as Akash and Anudeep said. So my company specific Coca-Cola, so there was during the GD and even the interview, there was nothing related to HR. So we had a group activity, not a discussion per se, where we were given a product and we were divided into two groups and told to market that product. What will the distribution strategies, branding strategies, what will the message of that product be? How will you create an advertisement and everything? So this was our group activity. And in the interview also, like one expects that since it was an HR role, some HR question would be there. But I was basically asked upon why I did something in the group activity. What was my rationale? What did I like about the other team's message and creativity? So basically, group discussion also extends to your interviews as well sometimes. So you should be clear why you said and why you did something and what was your stand in. Secondly, there was no HR question or academic question per se. I was asked about everything from my CV, like the activities I did in the committees, what I did prior to MBA. So when they don't ask you an HR specific question, I think from my personal experience, they want to see at your more towards your softer aspects, and it becomes sometimes a stress interview as well, since when you expect an HR question and you are being grilled upon your PQs and other activities, so you should be prepared for any and everything that could be thrown to you during your interviews, be it HR, be it non-HR, and be softer aspects as well.
But I'm very, very intrigued by the activity. This is the first time I'm hearing this kind of recruitment practice as well. So is this normal? I mean, do other companies also have such activities? Because this is the first time I've heard people doing an activity and then using that as a base.
This will be only be the time of that. I think Tanvi, Anudeep, and Akash can add from their experiences.
Yeah, I think quite a few of companies, as part of their hiring process, what they do is like a mix. Like they can give an offline case study. They might tell you to come up with some couple of slides that you need to present. That could be one way, or having some caselets during the interview process. It could be even in the first round or second round, and a combination of guesstimates or just evaluative structured thinking. Yeah, so those are the other aspects that I have seen during my B-School days.
Tanvi, you have been, I think, through it the most recently. Any interesting activity which you saw or came across?
Yeah, so I also saw a lot of companies starting with gamified assessments as their first step or
Right.
filtration. So that is also one thing that is given a lot of weightage during the process. So if that goes wrong, the interview is not scheduled or something. So that also has to be taken care of. So it is just like an aptitude test like we do. So some kind of brush up on aptitude if one feels weak can help. Also, interviews can be completely behavioral as well, just behavioral questions, and that's how a person is assessed. Because, as mentioned, they are not expecting much that we know that much HR, so that could be there. And however, my interview was a mix of HR technical questions, like a small case like and about myself, everything. So it could be a comprehensive one as well.
Great. So guys, as you can see, it could be anything. We've seen Aishwarya have no HR questions asked. We've seen Tanvi being asked an HR case set. So anything could happen. But some basic things which you should take care of is, read the latest happenings, which Anudeep mentioned about. Or as Aishwarya said, be prepared for behavioral questions. Be very clear about what you have on your CV, right? These are few things which you should be very, very clear about. Also, let's now take few questions from the audience, which is, so let's take a question by Chandan Banerjee first, which is, do unpaid NGO HR internships help during summer placement? So I think firstly, let me tell you, Chandan, that if you are paid or unpaid, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is the experience which you've gained. So it depends on what kind of internship you are doing, what kind of role, and how you present it on your CV. I think it will have a value if you've done good quality work. It will have a value. I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think if you wanted to showcase as part of your experience in your CV, then there are some things like experience letter and all those things that come into place. Just evaluating your experience from a formal standpoint. But otherwise, bang on what Akshay has mentioned. It's I think what you have gained from that internship or job matters more than whether it's a monetary or non-monetary effort. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the next question asked by Priyanka Sharma. Again, an interesting question. Should we go for part-time internships or should we go for full-time only? I think the question basically means that apart from the 2-month internship which we have, do you suggest that students go for some internships along with college? Yes, sir.
Quickly jump in with a perspective here, Akshay. It's a very interesting question, and such opportunities do come in a little more when the summer internship process is over, right? And it's called what we call in basically in our balance is live project, because one internship has already happened. So it would make a lot of sense for you also, Priyanka, because when you're making your CV, you would have one big bucket of your summer internship where you will be talking about whatever your work is, outcome is, and all of that. And then there is a separate novel bucket called live project, wherein, for example, I had been a part of 2 live projects, and in both these live projects, these are HR-centric live projects, right? So wherein it's similar to a summer internship, obviously, but the differences being it's not full-time. You come in, you do some sort of project, you do some benchmarking, you probably help them set some processes, all of that happens, but it's valued a lot, right? Definitely you would have learnings, you would have added something to the organization. So definitely you should if these opportunities are coming, you should grab them with both hands.
100%. And just to add here, one of my, I mean, this is one of the favorite examples I have. When people ask me this question, I always tell them this, that I give them the example of Aviral Bhatnagar. So if you know his story, he interned with some other company, but then he also took a off-campus internship during the second year with a VC because he really wanted to work with a VC, and finally got a PPO from that VC and he joined there. So you never know. If you take such an internship, you might get a full-time offer from there, and you might end up getting a better offer than the one which you got from your campus. So these things happen. So yeah, do take these opportunities if you get.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure. Also, just to add to that, for example, when you are prepping up for your summers, you have a dream role. Let's say like you wanted to get into consulting, and maybe for whatever reason that is, you haven't ended up in a consulting role. Now, the advantage of doing these live projects is that you never know, like because it's not a 2-month full-time commitment. So even organizations may be more than happy to give you that opportunity. And that's where again the alumni, your seniors would come into picture, because if they are in that organization and if you could nudge them to give a opportunity, which could be monetary or non-monetary, again, but you're gaining that experience, which, for example, if you wanted to do in consulting, try to get a consulting live project or be part of that. So that would add value when you're sitting for your finals and for other opportunities as well.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Moving on, let's take a couple of other questions as well. Okay. So Tejas has asked an interesting question. Tejas Gohil has asked, can we directly approach the authority for a job role change? Or do we need to give it in writing in case of an organization without HR department? I'm assuming you mean if you want to change your role in an organization, how do you go about it? I think it depends from organization to organization. So there's no fixed set of best practices which we can offer currently. So okay, moving on from that question. So Yash Siria has asked, would process training experience be required or beneficial for HR placements? Any idea on that?
Now, what does process training mean in this case? I mean, any other context that could be shared?
Right. So Yash, I mean, if you could, give us the context, it will be helpful, because I think we are not very clear about it. Anybody else has an answer or not really? Should we move on? Okay, moving on. Right. So we've also spoken about the interviews now. Just one thing before we, wrap up this session. A couple of things. Let's discuss a couple of things. First is any specific. We've looked at few resources. Anything else? Any other advice you would give to the interns so that they can prepare for the summer placements? So we've already told them few resources which they can look at, some courses which they can do. Apart from that, any other tips which you want to give them on how to prepare for the interviews?
One quick tip, Akshay, that I would like definitely I'd like to add is uh, do focus. Definitely, there's an academic side of things which you should be focusing on when it comes to your interview prep. That is important. Another thing which is equally important is the behavioral questions. So I have seen companies or some of my colleagues how because they have practiced their behavioral questions well, they knew the kind of stories and the instances that they want to convey. They used to have kick-ass interview experiences, right? And they used to actually crack in interviews very easily. So many of us, and this is something that all of us, would come from, would have this before actually going through this process, is that we can just wing it when it comes to behavioral questions. But chances are that if you are prepared for the kind of questions, for the kind of instances or stories of your life that you want to present in front of the interviewer, you're going to give a much better, well-rounded answer instead of just going about the bush and finally leaving the interviewer a little weary. Because think about interviewers' psychology, right? He or she has been sitting since 4 a.m. in the morning, maybe has met 15 more candidates and has to finally take X number of candidates out of them. They are looking for that delight, that spark, right? And it's up to you to present yourself in those 25, 30, 40 minutes, whatever time slot that you have got, right? So doesn't it make sense to maybe spend some time beforehand, get your life down on 2 to 3 A4 sheets of paper, know yourself well, and just go in there and do your magic. So that is something that I'm a true believer of, have been very strongly recommending people, and this has been worked out well for people who have laid stress on their BQ.
Just adding to what you said, Akash. So at least our college, what they used to do was they used to force us to write down answers to 10 or 20 typical questions, like things like what are your biggest strengths, weaknesses, tell me about yourself, which most likely you will be asked. So they used to make us write it so that once you write it, you'll go through it and then you have a better chance of recreating it in front of the in front of the interviewer. Great point. Thank you, Akash. Guys, anybody else want to add anything?
Just to add 2 points to it. Most colleges have these question banks of all the possible behavioral questions that they have seen in the past. And then what they do is, like, there's a mentor-mentee program. At least in my college, there was a program like that, where you would discuss with your mentor with all these behavioral questions, how can they structure it well, linking up to their past experience and all those. And also from a preparation standpoint for summer placements, what I could definitely advise everyone is that maintain a document on an Excel or however you wanted to maintain in terms of the kind of companies that come to campus. Try to map what kind of roles they offer. Also try to map the kind of interview process they have. For example, few companies have a case process followed by interviews. Few have GD plus followed by interviews and all. And then what you could do is, like, you could sort of do, in some sense, a gap analysis, identifying what are the areas where you are not strong. Like, for example, if you're not strong in GD, try to have more exposure to GD. Maybe you could have a group within yourself, practice those. Try to mock up as a GD and then come up with some topics. Have that mindset, discuss. You could record that, view it again. For example, for caselets, again, you could form a team of 2. Try to solve those caselets. Inculcate that structured process. So having all those things in place, building up to summer placements, will definitely be helpful, because you will be better prepared. Because what typically happens in summer placements is, like, back-to-back companies, again, depending on how the college operates. For example, in our college, it's a day system. So you have lineup of all the companies, you hardly have any breathing space. So you even don't know what kind of company that you are entering into unless you go into the door. Go inside the door and sit near the panel. You'll understand, okay, this is a company. There are some situations like that. So if you're not well prepared about the industry, the kind of company, the leadership, all those, then it might be a bouncer for you, and it might not go very well with the recruiters.
And once again, for practice, as Anudeep mentioned, you have many opportunities on campus. your placement preparation committees, they will organize various mock GD opportunities for you. So do use them. So, you can get better. Right. Thank you so much, Akash and Anudeep. Last few tips from Tanvi and Aishwarya, and then let's, maybe wrap it up.
Just one last thing, I think Anudeep and Akash covered most of it. So one last tip is, if you have a dream company and you have a mentor in mentor mapping, do reach out to other seniors as well who have interned in your dream company. Show your CVs, practice your BQs with them, show them your BQs so that they are aware of the company culture, because they have worked there for 2 months. So they'll be able to tell you how would that BQ be effective. Is your CV shaped up for that particular company? So in my personal experience, sitting and having these CQ wettings, CV wettings, and BQ wettings with multiple seniors will definitely help.
Cannot stress this enough once again. I would suggest that even if someone has been rejected by that company, let's say in the partner round, etc., you can even reach out to them, because they can tell you where they went wrong and what they learned. I mean, I definitely use this strategy. Right. So Tanvi, great. You have the great responsibility of finishing this on a high. So we want the best advice from you now. Give us something which will shake everyone up.
So what I used to do, and I still do, I strongly believe in storytelling. So I used to practice in front of the mirror, specifically before my interview days, so that the questions, tell me about yourself, how I'm going to present. These answers I used to do. So I do recommend, because I think confidence is a must when, in any kind of GD or interview. That has to be there, and cannot stress more on the preparation. There has to be good amount spent in the preparation, uh, and nothing can stop getting the dream summer internships.
Great. Thank you so much, Tanvi. So just to summarize things, 3 major points raised. One is try to reach out to people, make use of mentors, because they will be able to guide you. Secondly, prepare for GDs and various other rounds, etc. You can always, you have enough opportunities on campus to have enough mocks taken. That is for GD as well as for normal interviews as well. There are many people who will take your PIs for you. Many seniors will do that. And lastly, as Tanvi mentioned, the art of storytelling, very important. That will really help you in any interview, and I think in any field. Guys, so with that, we'll be come to the end of this session. Chandan has said that thank you so much for the insightful session. It was a pleasure. We just have one question. So Yash had asked us a question regarding process training, and he has come back. So let's take that up and let's finish it. So Yash has asked, by process training, I meant being a trainer mentor to new hire associates. I worked in a process for 2 years and I was selected in a role where I train new hires. Would such profile help for HR placements? Basically, he was selected in a role where he would train new hires. So would that experience help in HR placements?
Yeah, definitely. I think you could position that well in CV by massaging things related to HR, maybe part of a learning development team or something. And what was the outcome of it? It's not just stating what you have done, but what has been the outcome and what was the impact. If you're able to summarize that into a couple sentences in your CV, then definitely that would be helpful.
So I am looking at a statement like all those employees who got trained by me were 20% more productive than they. I mean, I think that is also possible nowadays with what people write on the CV. Akash, yes, you want to say something?
Yeah, something along similar lines, right? So I forgot. I'm sorry if I forgot. I think the name of the person who asked it, but
Yes.
There's a Yash. So there's this framework called STAR, which we used to abide by.
Right.
That really helps in 2 ways, right? It helps you in thinking of the CV points the way you would want to frame, and thinking of the story when it comes to, hey, can you tell me what you did when it came to process training? Apply a STAR, and you can come with a very good version of the answer, the kind of challenges you face, the kind of tasks that lay ahead of you, what you did, what could have done better, and what was the entire outcome, and why do you feel this is important or significant enough to be putting on your CV and having this discussion. So do read up on STAR. Anyone who is listening up, this really helped me, and would continue helping. I think it's a fantastic framework to abide by.
Right. Yeah, so I hope that answered your question, Yash. With that, I want to thank the panelists, Tanvi, Aishwarya, Anudeep and Akash for joining us on a Sunday. I'm sure this was very helpful for all the aspirants who tuned in. I also want to thank the audience members for tuning in. We hope that you learned something new and that you implement this during your summers. And then when you get a good placement, you do thank us individually, and we'll be very happy if that happens. Also, guys, so as you know, this is the last session of the Yobo Live. We have done sessions on finance, consulting, HR, Genman, sales marketing, Prodman. We've tried to give you a flavor of all the top domains which are available on campus. So we hope that you learn from them. And when we come back next season, we hope that you tune in then too. With that, thank you so much once again, guys. It was an absolute pleasure. Learned a lot from all of you. And see you soon. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Take care. Bye.